Well, I've been involved in 7 different longitudinal studies. I started my career actually collecting longitudinal data in Ethiopia. This was in the early 1990s, where we started following about 1,500 families in 15 rural communities across Ethiopia, which was the first data collection was happening after the end of the Civil War. And so that was the first one we did, and we continued that until about 2009 or something, I think. We kept on doing this. Subsequently, we did long-term follow-ups of data that were collected in the early 90s in Tanzania, and so again we had a very long-term study all the way up to around 2010 that we kept on collecting information on them. We did something like that in India as well, and then I got involved in the Young Lives data, which of course then a cohort study that children follows from early childhood all the way into adulthood. What I've definitely learned from studying these kind of data sets, so what I've learned from doing that kind of work is, in the first instance, I think how amazing it is to be able to build up an idea, an image of what's been happening over time to people. People sometimes underestimate the importance of constructing clear, well-established, stylized facts about what the nature of change is in these communities. Without longitudinal data, we could never have some of the insights we've gained. For example, in Ethiopia, we were very privileged, having followed for almost 20 years these people. We could see in very poor communities what the nature of the change was. We couldn't have predicted it beforehand, we couldn't have determined what it would be, but how they actually moved up. And this was a period of important improvement for many of them, and how agriculture changed, how asset holdings changed, how health and education changed. In Ethiopia, we had as a result actually quite a lot of influence towards policymakers, because we could actually bear witness to some of the changes that were happening, some mainly for good, some not necessarily, and we could document that very carefully. In Tanzania, for example, we could get stylized facts on the extent of mobility that nobody really realized how much people were moving, not just within their community, but actually out of their community into other parts of the countries. Only with a longitudinal data set that you then say on purpose, let's start tracking all these people, you start to getting a sense of the extreme extent of migration that was taking place from that particular area. To give an example, 10, 50 years later, we had essentially more than 50% of the individuals that we had interviewed were actually living outside their community, and not just in nearby community through marriage or whatever. We ended up interviewing people 1,000 kilometers away in the capital in Dar es Salaam. In fact, one person was in Sweden, and so the nature of the mobility there was very striking. And I think that's something we should never underestimate, how important it is for research to get good stylized facts about what the nature of change is. And then what longitudinal data can do is to actually, in a rich way, establish some of the interrelationships between the different factors that drive it. Of course, people can criticize it that it's very hard at times to get clear causalities in these data. But actually, because of the richness of the data, you can have different approaches. In economics, we could do modeling approaches that actually say, well, what kind of possible theories, ideas could be consistent with the nature of the change we observe. And you can actually start getting a clearer sense of what is not happening and what is likely to have happened and what is driving it. But you can do it in a rich way, not in a causality of a simple A to B, a little pill popped and then there's the outcome, as sometimes research sometimes seems to become these days, very narrowly intervention based, as if there is a silver bullet or a magic bean you can give to a person and then assess what the outcome is. But actually, within the context of the change as people are experiencing, to get a clear sense of the rich interrelations that are taking place. And I really think that it's a real problem at the moment, that we don't have that many longitudinal studies that have started in the last 10 years or are ongoing at the moment, with the idea of continuing for a long time. Because the richness that we could get in research from data that were started in the 1970s, 1980s and 1990s, and maybe just after millennium, is that actually that's the fruits we are bearing now. And I know in my field, in developed economics, a lot of the stylized facts are still based on the experience of these studies. the fact that we now seem to have much shorter horizons in terms of what research needs to deliver is a risk that we can't in 10, 15 years properly document what is happening to, for example, children born in 2010, children born in 2020, to understand how they actually have been progressing through life, or families in particular communities, where have they gone, how have they broken up, and how has it all changed. And it's these kind of things, I think, for the future we should just make sure we keep on focusing on.